Dame Janet Suzman, it's an absolute privilege to have you here at Edge Hill. You've just received an honorary doctorate from us, which we're so privileged that you accepted. So thank you very much.
It's my privilege, honestly. Thank you so much. You must just call me Janet.
Thank you, Janet.
Okay.
But you are a dame in every sense of the word. Well. Janet, you were incredibly generous to the graduates, and you shared lots and lots of words of wisdom with them, and then you sat through the graduation ceremony. What's your kind of sense of Edge Hill? What are you picking up as you're being here?
I love the way the ceremony was conducted. I love the semi-formality of it. I love the embracingness of it. But the whole thing I find always terribly moving, because when people are starting out on Dante's road of life, it just is moving. It's moving to see people's fear and excitement all mixed up in their eyes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When do you think you started out? Was it when you kind of graduated? You're at Lambda. Was it then, or was it before that? When was your moment?
Way before, I think. When I was at university, this university which none of you English can pronounce, University of Witwatersrand, which is known as Wits to civilians throughout the world. But it was a very political university, because I was there, forgive me, at a very political time.
In South Africa?
Yes, in Johannesburg. They were trying to impose apartheid on what had been open universities. And the government at the time, the regime, was introducing something it was colloquially called the Academic Apartheid Bill. Its full title was the Extension of University Education Act. This was about 1959. And frankly, I don't remember very much about going to any lectures or tutorials, because we were always on strike, the student body. We were always sitting on rather dry grass outside the library with our arms folded, refusing to move. Sometimes there were police on campus bonking everybody in the head with their batons. There were endless marches into the centre of Johannesburg with banners and notices saying knowledge is colourblind and so on. And what they were going to do was close the open universities. They were going to graciously allow black people to finish their degrees, but no new ones would be admitted, while they were going to build other colleges or universities, all of which was a bloody farce. And so my university time passed in a haze of either parties or demonstrations. I do remember it was a very horribly lively place.
Your aunt, Dame Helen Suzman, she herself was a huge campaigner, wasn't she?
Well, you say campaigner. Actually, she was an active member of Parliament. She sat in the House of Assembly, as it then was, for 35 years, mainly on her own. She was a one-woman party. She was returned by a constituency, I think it was mentioned in my citation, a fairly wealthy white Johannesburg constituency, which returned her again and again and again. This is one of South Africa's wonderful anomalies, to Parliament. She was duly elected. I think that's why I brought up a little, for a moment in my speech, that if you want to get things done, maybe you have to become a politician, because the engine of the place is the duly elected members. And if you want to change things, that's where it has to be changed. However, I was brought up, the whole atmosphere of South Africa was, politics was drip-fed into your veins. We all knew that it was an unsustainable social contract which the blooming government had devised. It was not bearable. So at the end of university, my entire generation left. You had two choices. You either stayed and got into big trouble, or you left. And wave upon wave upon wave of students left. They're populating from Atlanta to Sydney at the moment.
And you came to London?
I came to London. I got here on the cheapest way I knew how, which was an arts faculty trip to, fine arts faculty trip to Athens. And I'll never forget, we landed in Athens on a December day, because in South Africa, December is hot, and you write your finals at the end of the year, like normal people do. And then we hopped on a plane and went to Athens, where it was winter. and exactly like a Johannesburg day. Azure blue sky, sun shining, and we were free. There we were in Athens. And we made our way to London, and I stayed. Yeah.
And you trained to be an actress, and you are seen as one of, if not the most celebrated stage actress.
No, I'm not. I'm just one of them. There's so much talent here.
Well, you're not bad, are you?
I don't know. That's not for me to judge.
Well, from my perspective and from the many critical reviews, and also having seen you perform many times, I'd say you definitely are. And you've played many strong women. You are yourself a woman who, as a young woman, you were an activist, your aunt, a politician. These strong women you've played, who would you say you identified with the most?
I must pick you up on something,
Yes.
because this is a feminist university I've discovered.
Right, it is. Built around the
They're not
suffragettes.
strong women. They were written by a man called William Shakespeare. And he saw them as rounded personalities, not necessarily strong women.
Mm-hmm.
The weakest woman, if you like, I can think of, who's a very strong, dramatic character, is Blanche Dubois in Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire. You may call her a victim woman. But I think the women you're talking about are not victims in Shakespeare plays. They happen to be very 3D. And why do we think they're strong? Not at all. They're just women trying to make their way in life. So I rather don't describe them as that. I describe them as dramatic characters.
And
rather.
who would you say you identified with in terms of the many women you've played? Is there any one that for you is the character, the one that sits in your heart?
Oh gosh, I don't know. You know, you get entranced by the person you're playing at that moment. The one I'm finding endlessly fascinating was, of course, Cleopatra, because she's a mystery, partly because it's the only play Shakespeare wrote where the female character carries the last act. You've got to think about that quite carefully to understand that it's a big role for a remarkable actor. The Academy thinks it was played by a boy, and this is where we part company, because I'm quite sure that that character was not played by a boy. It was played 90% sure by a very accomplished male actor. I've discovered in my stay in this country that men love playing women. They absolutely love it, and they're very good at it. The burlesque side of it, of course, is Dame Edna Everage and Stanley Baxter and so on.
Pantomime Dame.
Yes, but the serious side of it is really seriously tackling women's roles, because women were not allowed to play them. But I think there was always a maverick element. Women, not 100% of women always obey the rules. There are always women who break the rules and become medical doctors by wearing a uniform. Something somewhere in history. Slowly these people are being uncovered, really, because they've had rather hidden histories. But I do find the size and complexity of what Shakespeare wrote absolutely riveting in that particular role, because she's not only a great comedienne, she's a great tragedian as well. So it demands every bit of whatever talent you may possess.
The transition from actor to director, that's something that you've made. And then as a director, you've worked with many actors and actresses and directed many things. How did you find that transition? Did it feel like a very fluid transition, or was it quite difficult to sort of shift that perspective in terms of what you were doing?
I think what was more difficult was to shift back to being actor after tasting what it was like to be a director. I mean, the joy of directing is that you're God. You're in charge of everybody's fate in the play. And of course, as an actor, you're only responsible for your own bit, just as we are in life. You know, a dramatic character sees the world entirely through their own retina, just like we do in life.
Yeah.
Your point of view. A director has to take everybody's point of view and make it a cohesive whole.
What do you prefer?
It's a privilege to try and make sense of a great work of art, like Othello. And it needs to hold water at every phase. So you need to make everything cohere to an idea you may have of how it is. Doing Othello then was in a way easy, because who had told in great verse, great poetry, the story of an outsider's, if you like, a black man's humiliation, constant humiliation by some kind of a psychotic white guy, Iago. And you know, it was so moving because on Mondays at the Market Theatre, the Market Theatre, in case anybody doesn't quite know, was founded as a free space. In other words, a space where apartheid did not apply. I don't even know the rules. I think it was a club. Maybe you had to join the club. But it was a very important theatre in Johannesburg, founded in the mid-70s. And the great Athol Fugard wrote his plays for that space. And another playwright called Barney Simon, who was the Peter Brook of South Africa. Peter Brook has used a lot of his stuff, as a matter of fact. And there, you mixed in the bar with all your fellow South Africans, whatever colour they were, and there was no apartheid on the stage. So often people came to see Othello who had never seen, and it is a rather sexually implicit play, Othello. It's about sexual jealousy. They were not used to the idea, let alone the fact, of a black man and a white woman embracing. So sometimes the thunder of seats, wham, 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 as people walked out, which was great, yes.
Really? It was
we
that
loved
offensive
that. We
and
loved
horrifying.
that. But on Monday nights, they had a thing called twofers, 2-for-1s, so cheaper seats. And I used to stand on Monday nights in the foyer of the Market Theatre, which is a very simple Indian marketplace downtown, you know, in a poor part of Johannesburg. And there would be youths from Soweto lounging about, chewing a matchstick. And you'd say, why have you come? They had never seen a Shakespeare play before, but they'd heard about this story. And it turns out it was their story. Their people were being daily humiliated. And they'd come to see a poet write about it. So it began to take on a life there which none of us expected. It was a sort of grand bonus, and that's why I convinced the exiled ANC, the government in waiting, the black government in waiting, that Shakespeare was a protest playwright. And I'm telling you, he would have been pleased with that, because he was, in his own time. Elizabethan England was a pretty dangerous place. And every single one of his plays there's extremity in it. Everybody's either a murderer or being murdered or being ousted or falling off a throne or being drowned in, you know, they're very extreme plays, and he understood extremity. He understood political danger very well. So Elizabethan England seemed to fit Johannesburg, let me put it that way, very well. It was a good fit. But, you know, the Market Theatre was very formative for me because I realised how important theatre can be, especially in authoritarian regimes. People gathered like moths to a flame to have an evening of freedom in their heads.
Absolutely.
They came to see plays that were speaking the unspeakable, which is why cultural boycotts are always a mistake.
Yeah.
You've got to get people worried. And the only way to get people worried is to have great artists frothing up the waters. Otherwise, everything's too calm and nothing seditious gets through, you know?
And sedition is something that you've enjoyed, in the sense that you
Well,
described...
satire. You've got to mock people. You have to mock a regime. You have to be ready to belittle badness.
And never take oneself too seriously either.
No. That's a personal life. I'm really
Yes.
talking about theatre as a political weapon of some kind.
So with the graduates today, they'll be watching this again. They'll be remembering that moment. They'll be remembering you. What are the words that you want to leave them with? What are the things that you want them to take away as that kind of the advice from a woman who has really, really achieved so much in her own career? How can they get to that place in their own careers?
I don't know, because the social media are stronger than they are at the moment. I'm too old to do the blooming thing, so I don't tweet, and I don't Facebook, and I don't do any of that stuff. But if you do, you're doomed to follow what's going on. all this trending stuff. And I would say untrend a bit.
Be a maverick.
Just untrend a bit. Allow yourself to be yourself instead of being what everybody says you ought to be or do. I don't know.
That's a great place to finish. Dame Janet Suzman, thank you very much.
Thank you.